What happens when one of Hollywood's most outspoken actresses meets daytime television's most fearless host, and neither one is willing to back down? The tension in Studio 23 was thick enough to cut with a knife as Jada Pinkett Smith settled into the guest chair, her jaw set with determination. Joy Behar, never one to shy away from controversy, had her notes ready and a glint in her eye that spelled trouble. What started as a routine interview about Jada's latest projects quickly spiraled into television history, culminating in security being called and a guest being escorted off set for the first time in The View's decades on air. But before we dive into this explosive confrontation, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think really happened here, because this story is about to get wild. The morning had started like any other. At The View, the co-hosts were in their usual positions, coffee cups steaming, makeup freshly applied, and the familiar energy of live television crackling through the air. Joy Behar shuffled through her index cards one final time, her signature smirk plain at the corners of her mouth. She had done her homework on today's guest, and she was ready. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome actress, producer, and author, Jada Pinkett Smith. Whoopi Goldberg announced with her trademark warmth, though even she seemed to sense something different in the air today. Jada walked onto the set with her characteristic confidence, her red carpet smile firmly in place. She hugged each host, lingering perhaps a moment longer than usual with joy, as if she could sense the storm brewing behind those calculating eyes. The audience applauded enthusiastically, unaware they were about to witness one of the most dramatic moments in daytime television history. "So, Jada," Joy began, her voice honey-sweet, but with an underlying edge. "We're here to talk about your new book, but I have to ask about something that's been on everyone's mind. Your recent revelations about your marriage have certainly stirred up quite the conversation." Jada's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Joy, I'm here to discuss my creative projects and the message I'm trying to share with women about finding their authentic voice." "Oh, but isn't that exactly what we're talking about?" Joy pressed, leaning forward slightly. "Your authentic voice has certainly been heard loud and clear. Some might say too clear, if you know what I mean." The other co-hosts exchanged glances. Sunny Hostin shifted uncomfortably in her seat, while Sarah N. took a careful sip of her coffee, clearly sensing the shift in energy. Whoopi maintained her professional composure, but her eyes were alert, ready to intervene if necessary. "I'm not sure I follow," Jada replied, though her tone suggested she knew exactly where this was heading. Joy chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. "Come on, Jada. We're all adults here. Your whole, shall we call it, airing of dirty laundry has become quite the spectacle. Some people are saying you've turned your personal life into a publicity stunt." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Jada's composure began to crack, her media-trained smile faltering for just a moment before she collected herself. "I think there's a difference between being authentic and creating spectacle. Joy, perhaps some people have trouble distinguishing between the two." "Oh, I can distinguish just fine," Joy shot back, her voice gaining momentum. "What I'm having trouble with is understanding why anyone would think the public needs to know every intimate detail of their marriage troubles. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion, except the drivers keep getting out to describe every dent and scratch to the nearest camera." The audience had gone quiet, sensing the real tension building between the two women. This wasn't playful banter or typical View controversy. This was personal, and it was escalating quickly. Jada straightened in her chair, her media persona beginning to slip away entirely. "You know what, Joy? I think what you're really having trouble with is a black woman speaking her truth without asking for permission first." The words cut through the studio like a blade. Joy's eyebrows shot up, and for a moment, she was actually speechless. The other hosts looked stunned, unsure whether to jump in or let this play out. "Excuse me?" Joy finally managed, her voice rising an octave. Did you really just play that card with me? After everything I've stood for in my career, I didn't play anything," Jada replied, her voice steady but cold. "I simply stated a fact. Honey, when you put your business on every talk show, podcast, and social media platform in existence, you're literally asking for everyone's opinion. That's how this works." "No, that's how you think it works," Jada fired back. But just because I choose to share my story doesn't mean I'm inviting judgment from people who don't know me, my family, or what we've been through. The tension was now palpable throughout the studio. Camera operators adjusted their angles, sensing they were capturing something significant. In the control room, producers were probably having heated discussions about whether to cut to commercial. Joy leaned back in her chair, a sardonic smile spreading across her face. "Oh, we don't know you, Jada. At this point, I think we know you better than some of your family members do. We know about your entanglements, your red table talks, your healing journeys, your spiritual awakenings. We know it all because you've made sure we know it all. And that bothers you because," Jada challenged, her voice rising to match Joy's energy. "It bothers me because it's narcissistic," Joy said bluntly, and the words hit like a thunderclap. "It bothers me because there are real problems in this world, real issues that need attention. And instead, we're all sitting here dissecting your marriage like it's some kind of national crisis." The audience gasped audibly. Several people in the front row covered their mouths in shock. Whoopi finally spoke up, trying to regain control of the situation. "Ladies, maybe we should take a step back here and—" "No, Whoopi," Jada interrupted, her voice trembling with anger. "Let her finish. I want to hear what else Joy has to say about narcissism, because that's rich coming from someone who's made a career out of giving unsolicited opinions about everyone else's life." Joy's face flushed red. "Unsolicited. I'm a talk show host, Jada. It's literally my job to have opinions about current events and public figures. But the difference is, I don't pretend my personal drama is some kind of public service, and I don't pretend that being bitter and judgmental makes me wise," Jada snapped back. The gloves were completely off now. What had started as a typical celebrity interview had devolved into something raw and personal, with both women landing verbal blows that cut deep. Joy stood up from her chair, her index cards scattering to the floor. "Bitter? You want to talk about bitter? I'm not the one who spent years dragging my husband through the mud on national television because I couldn't handle my business privately like a grown woman." Jada shot to her feet as well, her chair rolling backward. "And I'm not the one who sits behind this desk every day tearing down other women because I'm threatened by anyone who doesn't fit into my narrow worldview." "Threatened?" Joy laughed harshly. "By you, please. I'm embarrassed for you, not threatened by you." The studio had erupted into chaos. Audience members were looking around in confusion and excitement, some pulling out their phones despite the no recording policy. The other hosts were on their feet too, trying to de-escalate the situation. But both women were too far gone to be easily calmed. "You should be embarrassed," Jada shot back, sitting up here like some kind of moral authority, "when you're just a bitter old woman who can't stand to see someone else living authentically." That was the line that Joy couldn't let pass her face. Went from red to purple with rage, and when she spoke, her voice was dangerously quiet. "Did you just call me a bitter old woman on my own show?" The silence that followed was deafening. Joy's question hung in the air like a loaded weapon, and everyone in Studio 23 seemed to hold their breath simultaneously. Jada's eyes flashed with defiance, and instead of backing down, she doubled down, with a conviction that shocked everyone present. "If the shoe fits," Jada said coldly, crossing her arms over her chest. "You asked me here supposedly to talk about my book, but really you just wanted to ambush me with your judgments about my personal life. So yes, Joy, if that's what you want to call bitter and old, then that's exactly what I called you." The audience erupted into a mixture of gasps, nervous laughter, and scattered applause. Some people seemed thrilled by the drama, while others appeared genuinely uncomfortable witnessing such a raw confrontation. Joy's mouth opened and closed several times, as if she couldn't quite process what she had just heard. Whoopi stepped forward, her hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "Okay, everybody, let's just take a breath here. We're all professionals, and we can work through this." But Joy wasn't having it. She pointed a shaking finger directly at Jada, her voice trembling with rage. "You know what? I've been doing this for decades, and I have never, and I mean never, been disrespected like this by a guest. Never. Maybe that's because you've never been this disrespectful to a guest before." Jada fired back without missing a beat. "You brought me here under false pretenses. Joy, you pretended this was going to be about my creative work, but you just wanted to tear me down on national television. Sunny Hostin finally found her voice and tried to mediate. "Ladies, I think we're all getting a little heated here. Maybe we can find some common ground." And common ground? Joy whirled around to face Sunny, her anger now spilling over onto her own co-host. "There is no common ground with someone who comes on my show and calls me bitter and old. That's not a disagreement. That's just plain disrespect." Sarah N. nervously shuffled her papers, clearly wishing she could disappear. Into her chair, the camera operators continued filming, knowing they were capturing something unprecedented. In all the years The View had been on the air, through countless controversial moments and heated debates, nothing quite like this had ever happened. Jada took a step closer to Joy, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried throughout the entire studio. "You want to talk about disrespect? Let's talk about you sitting there judging my marriage, my family, and my choices, when you don't know the first thing about what we've been through. That's disrespect, Joy." "I know what you've told the entire world," Joy shot back, matching Jada's energy. "And frankly, I wish I knew less. We all wish we knew less. Some things should stay private, but you've made privacy a foreign concept in your household." The words hit their mark, and for a moment, Jada's composure cracked completely. Her voice rose to a shout that could probably be heard in the next studio. "How dare you judge how I handle my pain? How dare you sit there and tell me how I should process my trauma?" "I'm not judging your pain," Joy yelled back, completely abandoning any pretense of professional composure. "I'm judging your need to turn everything into a public spectacle. There's a difference." Whoopi tried once more to restore order, her voice booming over both women. "That's enough. Both of you need to step back right now." But neither woman was listening. They were locked in a battle of wills that had gone far beyond the original topic of conversation. This had become personal in a way that couldn't be easily undone. Jada laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "You know what's really funny, Joy? You spend every single day on this show talking about other people's business, dissecting their lives, offering your commentary on things that have nothing to do with you. But the moment someone shares their own story, their own truth, you have a problem with it. Because there's a difference between commentary and exploitation," Joy replied, her voice hoarse from shouting. "What you've done isn't brave or authentic. It's calculated. You've turned your family's private struggles into content, and that's not healing, that's marketing." The accusation of exploitation seemed to strike Jada like a physical blow. Her eyes filled with tears of rage, and when she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "You think I exploited my family? You think I put us through all of this for marketing? Do you have any idea how much courage it took to tell those stories? Do you have any idea how much it cost us? If it cost you so much, then why did you keep doing it?" Joy challenged, her own voice cracking with emotion. "Why didn't you stop after the first revelation, or the second, or the third? Why did you keep going back to that well?" For the first time since the confrontation began, Jada seemed genuinely speechless. She stood there, tears threatening to spill over, searching for words that wouldn't come easily. Sarah N., clearly uncomfortable with the silence, tried to offer a gentle redirect. "Maybe we could talk about the positive response you've received from other women who have gone through similar experiences." But Jada ignored her completely, her focus laser-locked on Joy. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter but somehow more intense than before. "You want to know why I kept talking? Because every time I shared something real, something vulnerable, women reached out to me. Women who felt alone in their struggles. Women who thought they were the only ones going through these things. That's why I kept talking, Joy. Not for marketing, not for attention, but because my pain had purpose." Joy's expression softened slightly, but she wasn't ready to concede the point. "And that's admirable, Jada. It really is. But at what cost? At what point does helping others become secondary to feeding the machine?" "What machine?" Jada demanded, the fire returning to her voice. "The machine that you're part of? The machine that takes people's stories and turns them into sound bites and hot takes. You're mad at me for controlling my own narrative instead of letting people like you control it for me." The observation hit Joy like a slap across the face. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, clearly struggling with the truth. In Jada's words, Sunny tried once more to find middle ground. "I think you both have valid points here. Jada, Your transparency has clearly helped a lot of people. And Joy, you raise important questions about privacy and boundaries. But neither woman was interested in finding middle ground anymore. This had become a philosophical battle about truth, privacy, authenticity, and the cost of public vulnerability. Jada wiped her eyes, smearing her makeup slightly, but her voice remained strong. You know what the real problem is, Joy? You're from a generation that believed in suffering in silence. You think keeping secrets and pretending everything is fine is somehow more noble than dealing with your problems honestly. And you're from a generation that thinks everything needs to be shared. Joy fired back, some of her earlier fire returning. Not everything is content, Jada. Not every personal struggle needs to become a public lesson. But this one did, Jada said firmly. This one needed to be shared because too many women are dying quietly in marriages that don't serve them. Many people are living lies because they're afraid of judgment from people like you. The words people like you seemed to be the final straw for Joy. Her face flushed red again, and she took a step toward Jada, her finger pointed accusingly. People like me? You mean people who have some sense of boundaries? People who don't think every personal crisis needs a publicity tour? No, Jada replied, matching Joy's aggressive posture. I mean people who are so comfortable with their own dishonesty that they can't stand to see someone else telling the truth. The accusation of dishonesty was a bridge too far. Joy's voice rose to a near scream, her professional facade completely abandoned. Dishonest? You want to talk about dishonest? You sat in interviews for years pretending you had this perfect marriage, this perfect family, this perfect life. Then, when it all fell apart, you acted like your transparency was some kind of gift to the world. That's not honesty, that's damage control. Jada's composure finally shattered completely. Tears streaming down her face, she shouted back with equal force. But at least when I realized it was broken, I had the courage to say so publicly instead of hiding behind fake smiles and empty platitudes. Courage, Joy laughed harshly. You call that courage? I call it attention-seeking behavior disguised as empowerment. The studio had descended into complete chaos. The audience was buzzing with excitement and shock. Some people were standing to get a better view, and the other co-hosts had given up any pretense of controlling the situation. Security personnel had appeared at the edges of the set, clearly ready to intervene if things escalated further. Whoopi made one final attempt to restore order, her voice booming with authority. That's it. Both of you need to sit down, right? Now, or we're going to commercial. But it was too late for commercials, or cooler heads to prevail. Jada turned to face Whoopi, her voice filled with resolve and finality. Don't you dare try to silence me now, Whoopi, Jada said, her voice carrying a dangerous calm that somehow felt more threatening than all the shouting that had come before. I came here in good faith, and I've been ambushed by someone who clearly has her own issues with successful black women speaking their truth. Whoopi's eyes widened in shock. Even she, with all her years of experience handling difficult situations, seemed stunned by the turn the conversation had taken. Jada, that's not what this is about, and you know it. Do I? Jada challenged, turning her gaze back to Joy, who was still standing with her fists clenched at her sides. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like Joy has a real problem with me owning my story instead of letting her and people like her define it for me. Joy's voice was hoarse but still defiant. This has nothing to do with race, and you know it. This is about basic human decency and knowing when to keep your mouth shut. The words "keep your mouth shut" seemed to echo through the studio like a gunshot. Jada's face went through a series of emotions, from hurt to anger to something that looked almost like pity. Keep my mouth shut, she repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. There it is. That's what this is really about, isn't it, Joy? You want me to keep my mouth shut? You want me to go back to pretending? Go back to lying? Go back to protecting everyone else's comfort at the expense of my own truth? I want you to have some dignity, Joy shot back, her voice cracking with exhaustion and emotion. I want you to remember that some things are sacred, some things are private, some things don't belong to the public. Jada laughed, but there was no humor in it, only sadness and resignation. Dignity? You know what's undignified? Joy, living a lie, pretending everything is fine when it's not, sacrificing your authentic self to maintain an image that serves everyone but you. Sarah N. made one last desperate attempt to salvage the interview. Maybe we could focus on the positive impact your openness has had on other women. I think that's something we can all appreciate. But Jada shook her head, her decision clearly made. No, Sarah, I'm done trying to make this work. I'm done trying to have a reasonable conversation with someone who invited me here just to tear me down. She turned to face Joy directly, and when she spoke, her voice was steady and final. You know what, Joy? You're right about one thing. Some things are sacred. My healing is sacred. My growth is sacred. My right to tell my own story is sacred, and I'm not going to let you or anyone else make me feel ashamed for claiming that right. Joy's face was flushed with anger and something that might have been embarrassment. Nobody's asking you to be ashamed. We're asking you to be responsible. Responsible to who? Jada demanded. To you. To an audience that doesn't know me. To a society that would rather see me suffer in silence than heal out loud. No, Joy. I'm responsible to myself, to my family, and to the women who have found strength in my vulnerability. The security personnel had moved closer to the set, clearly, receiving instructions through their earpieces. The tension in the studio was so thick it felt like the air itself might crack. Whoopi tried once more to mediate, her voice gentle but firm. Ladies, we're all passionate about our beliefs here, but maybe we can find a way to respectfully disagree. There's nothing respectful about what happened here today, Jada replied, not taking her eyes off Joy. I was invited here under false pretenses, ambushed with personal attacks, and told to keep my mouth shut when I defended myself. That's not journalism, Joy. That's just cruelty. Joy's composure cracked one final time, and she shouted with the last of her energy, You want to play victim? Fine, but don't expect me to participate in your pity party. The words pity party seemed to be the final insult Jada was willing to tolerate. She straightened to her full height, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute finality. I don't need your pity, Joy. What I needed was basic human respect, and you couldn't even manage that. You know what? I'm done here. I'm not going to sit here and let you continue to disrespect me, my family, and my choices. She began gathering her purse and jacket, her movements deliberate and dignified despite the chaos around her. This interview is over? Whoopi stood up quickly, trying to maintain some semblance of control over the situation. Jada, please, let's not end things this way. But Joy, perhaps realizing she had gone too far, or perhaps too proud to back down now, made one final comment that sealed both their fates. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Maybe next time you'll think twice before coming on a serious talk show if you can't handle serious questions. The studio went completely silent. Even the audience seemed to sense that something irreversible had just happened. Jada stopped gathering her things and turned to look at Joy with an expression of complete disgust. Serious questions. She repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. Is that what you call what happened here today? Joy, you didn't ask me one serious question about my book, my work, or anything meaningful. You just spent 30 minutes trying to shame me for living my life authentically. She slung her purse over her shoulder and looked directly into the camera, addressing the audience at home. To anyone watching this who has ever been told to keep quiet about their pain, to anyone who has ever been shamed for speaking your truth, don't let anyone silence you. Not Joy Behar, not anyone. Joy was on her feet again, pointing toward the exit. That's it. Security, please escort Ms. Smith from the building. This interview is terminated. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Security personnel began, moving toward Jada, but she held up a hand to stop them, her dignity intact despite everything that had transpired. I don't need an escort, she said calmly. I can find my own way out. I've been finding my own way for a long time now. She turned to face the other co-hosts, her voice softer now, but still firm. Whoopi, Sunny, Sarah, thank you for trying to keep this civil. I'm sorry you had to witness this unprofessional behavior. Then she looked one last time at Joy, who was standing with her arms crossed, her face a mask of stubborn defiance. Joy, I hope someday you find the courage to be as honest about your own life as you expect others to be about theirs. With that, Jada Pinkett Smith walked off the view set with her head held high, leaving behind a studio full of stunned silence and a television audience that had just witnessed one of the most dramatic confrontations in daytime TV history. The cameras continued rolling as Joy stood frozen, clearly processing what had just happened. Whoopi attempted to restore some normalcy to the situation, but the damage was done. The interview that was supposed to promote a book had instead revealed the deep philosophical divide between two strong women who refused to back down from their beliefs. As the security doors closed behind Jada, the studio remained eerily quiet. Joy finally sat back down, her hands shaking slightly as she tried to collect herself. The other co-hosts exchanged worried glances, unsure how to proceed. Whoopi ever. The professional turned to the camera with a forced smile. Well, folks, that's television for you. Sometimes conversations get heated when people are passionate about their beliefs. But everyone knew this was more than just a heated conversation. This was a moment that would be replayed, analyzed, and debated for years to come. A moment when two powerful women refused to find common ground and instead chose to burn bridges in the most public way possible. The aftermath would dominate headlines, social media, and water cooler conversations across the country. Some would side with Joy, arguing that Jada had indeed overshared and turned personal struggles into public entertainment. Others would rally behind Jada, praising her courage to speak authentically in a world that often demands silence from women, especially women of color. But in that moment, as the credits began to roll on one of the most explosive episodes in The View's history, only one thing was certain. Neither woman would ever be quite the same after this confrontation. And daytime television had just witnessed something unprecedented. The security footage would later show Jada walking through the halls of the studio with her head held high, never once looking back. And Joy, sitting at that familiar desk, staring at her scattered index cards and probably wondering if she had won the battle but lost something much more important in the process. So what do you think really happened here? Was Joy right to call out what she saw as attention-seeking behavior? Or was Jada justified in defending her right to tell her own story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that subscribe button for more explosive celebrity confrontations. And let us know which side you're on in this unforgettable clash between two of entertainment's most outspoken voices.